Hi, everybody. Matthew Turnage here, and this time I've got something special here, something that has been in the works for a while. I'm glad to finally have it happen. I've got one of my friends from YouTube here with me, Sam St. John, and today we're going to be ranking our top 10 favorite Bob Dylan songs by their lyrics. And just for anybody who hasn't seen on my channel before, me talking about Dylan, I'm relatively new to really exploring Dylan. Around December, I started getting into him. I've got 3 videos talking about going through his catalog. They're on a playlist on my channel if you'd like to check it out. But just to give you a brief idea, I've been going through his albums in order. My last video only went up through Nashville Skyline. Since then, I have gotten Self-Portrait. So my list is going to be pretty well focused on those 60s songs, since that's what I'm most familiar with. Although I have a few later ones in the list that we'll get to. But now I'll let Sam let you introduce yourself, talk about your channel and your history with Dylan.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for finally letting me come on here. Like you said, it's been a long time in the works, but I've been into Dylan pretty, in terms of like actually really getting into Dylan. It was my junior year of high school, and I had a teacher in high school who we had a assignment where we were deciphering lyrics, and he always picked a lyric to kind of get the conversation started. And one of the songs that he picked was "Ring Them Bells" from the album "Oh Mercy" from 1989. And I mean, obviously I knew Dylan. I'd really been into the Traveling Wilburys, so that was kind of my first, in-depth look at Dylan. But once I started actually purchasing Dylan albums, the first one I bought was "Oh Mercy" from 1989, and then just kind of went all over the place for whatever I was feeling. I remember specifically the first new Dylan album that I bought, like when it came out, was "Tempest" back in 2012. And of course, since then, I've bought every Dylan album on its release date. I've been fortunate to see Dylan. I've seen him 4 times. Most recently, I saw him in Greensboro, North Carolina, beginning of April, I believe. And it was great. He did essentially almost all of his new album. And it's always a different show when you see Dylan. If you go on different tours, he's, still very prolific even now at 81 years old. So he's my go-to guy. He's my favorite songwriter. If he put out an album of nursery rhymes, I would buy it. So I love him to death, and I'm really happy to kind of hone in on some lyrics. I've never done this before.
All right, great. Well, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And well, why don't you quickly say something about your channel and
Sure.
where people can find
Yeah.
it?
My channel name is just my name. It's Sam St. John. And if you like, I mean, obviously Bob Dylan, I don't talk a lot about Dylan, but I mention him just because there are other people that do it so much better than I do. I'm really big into Americana, roots music, but I love obviously the Beatles and some hard rock and all sorts of things. But I mainly focus on songwriting. People like John Prine, Van Morrison. I love the Avett Brothers. They're a newer folk group out of North Carolina, and Tom Petty. I'm a huge Tom Petty guy. So I'll do concert reviews. I'll do, album reviews, unboxings, things like that. So just look up my name, Sam St. John, and I should pop up.
All right, great. And I'll have a link to your channel in the description too. All right. Well, let's get started. Sam, why don't you go first? We'll start with our number 10s.
Number 10 for me, and again, this was kind of just making this list, was Matt and I were talking before we started recording. We just kind of threw a bunch of lyrics on a page and just kind of had to do some shuffling around and some hard eliminating. And that the eliminating part was hard because my number 10 before this was one of my favorite lyrics, and I thought, oh man, that's number 10. I completely forgot this lyric, so my number 10 has to hit the curb. But number 10 is from what some people consider Dylan's comeback. It's from the album "Time Out of Mind" from 1997, produced by Daniel Lanois, and it's the song "Make You Feel My Love," which is considered a new, one of Dylan's better latter day ballads. It's been covered by a ton of people, and people probably don't even know it's a Bob Dylan song. I mean, I think Garth Brooks kind of had a semi-hit with it. Adele had a hit with it when she was very young, like 18 or 19. I want to say I want to say maybe somebody like Miley Cyrus has even covered it. Kind of off an album, but it's just it's a beautiful love song. The specific lyric that I wrote down for the terms of this video was he sings, "I'd go hungry, I'd go black and blue, I'd go crawling down the avenue. No, no, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love." It's just a beautiful lyric how he sings it, and it's just, this weathered Dylan voice. I mean, he's obviously, later middle aged in 1997. He's in his 50s, but his voice sounds like he's already in his 70s and 80s, and just an incredible performance by him. I've been fortunate to see him do this live a couple of times, and it's still powerful, even though it's a completely different arrangement. How he does it now, it's still beautiful. Just one of those desperate pleas of, I'll do anything for you just so that you can feel how I feel about you. So number 10 is "Make You Feel My Love." And this is a fantastic album. If nobody knows it, check it out.
All right. So my number 10, as I was thinking about the types of songs that I wanted, one of the things I thought about when I first started listening to Dylan, one of the things that really impressed me about him was not only the sort of the poetic nature of his lyrics, the imagery, but also one of the things that I really gravitated to early on was his sense of humor. So I had to put one of my favorite more humorous songs on the list, and that's coming in at number 10 from the freewheeling Bob Dylan, "I Shall Be Free." And the line or the verse in that song that I just absolutely love is the one that says, "Well, my telephone rang, it would not stop. It's President Kennedy calling me up. He said, 'My friend Bob, what do we need to make the country grow?' I said, 'My friend John, Bridget Bardot.'" And I always love that. That always makes me laugh. It always puts a smile on my face. And the whole song is very funny. There's a lot of funny stuff, but that line in particular, always really got to me. So, I love Bob's sense of humor. So I wanted to represent that with at least one song on the list. So at number 10 from freewheeling Bob Dylan, I've got "I Shall Be Free."
Number 9 for me, a lot of people consider this one of Dylan's best songs. It's one that he really hasn't taken out of rotation, performing it live. It's from my favorite Bob Dylan album, "Blood on the Tracks." It's "Tangled Up in Blue," and probably one of the bigger hits, that I have on my list here, if you want to call any of Dylan's songs hits. But the specific line that I wrote, and it's a line that I hadn't really thought of until I was in college, and my best friend, his name is Chris, in college, and still best friends. He always would sing the line from "Tangled Up in Blue." "I helped her out of a jam, I guess, but I used a little too much force." So to go with that humor, you can just picture that, just that line, all the different meanings that it has. I helped her, but I might have done it a little bit too much. And it's a very quick line, and it's again one of those songs that Dylan scholars have really been studying for years and years and years, because he was always changing the lyrics. If you listen to some old demos, or if you have the bootleg series, the "More Blood, More Tracks" series, you can hear all the different variations of the song. And even now, live, you'll go see him live, and there are lyrics in the live versions now that weren't on the original. But I've always loved that line of "I helped her out of a jam, I guess, but I used a little too much force." So number 9 is "Tangled Up in Blue."
Yeah, that's a song that, I've that's one of his later songs that I am really familiar with, and that's something that I've heard about, that how the lyrics continue to evolve, and I think that's sort of interesting that it almost makes it like the song is never quite finished, because it can
Yeah,
always
love it.
change, and so that's really interesting. All right, my number 9 song is off of another side of Bob Dylan, which was an album as a whole. I like it, but I don't necessarily get into it as much as some of the others. But this song in particular, I always have liked, and that's "It Ain't Me, Babe." And there's some lines in that I really love. You say you're looking for someone who's never weak but always strong to protect and defend you, whether you were right or wrong. Someone to open each and every door, but it ain't me, babe. I really like that song. It's sort of an interesting, look on a relationship and expectations and kind of know what you're getting into, sort of thing. It kind of remind me a little bit of there was an interview with Paul McCartney where it was Howard Stern was interviewing actually, and Paul was talking about Hey Jude and John's divorce and all that. And he said that John's first wife, Cynthia, said, what I really want is a man, come home and put on his slippers, and have a drink, a conversation, that sort of stuff. And Paul said he was thinking, well, you got the wrong guy, that's not
Yeah,
John,
yeah,
that's not John, and it's that sort of thing. Sometimes people go into a relationship with certain expectations, but you can't make somebody be something that they're not, yeah, I think that's a really, really good song. And all the lyrics are good, but that little verse in particular, always particularly enjoyed.
yeah. It's great. So it's one of his more biting songs, even though it's a lot of times he's got those biting lyrics in the more political songs. This one's not a political song. It's pretty much a pop song to an extent.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons that album was criticized. Actually, I think I misspoke earlier. I mentioned that I had 10 different albums because I grabbed 10 different albums from my shelf because I was remembering off the top of my head what songs I had picked. But in reality, the number 8 song is also from Time Out of Mind, which is funny because I don't listen to this album that much, but it's just interesting how 2 songs really, made themselves known when I was doing this list. It's the song Not Dark Yet, track 7 on this album. Again, another beautiful ballad by Dylan, and great vocal phrasing by him. Again, later middle-aged Dylan. The very first the very first stanza is the one that really stuck out to me, where he says, shadows are falling and I've been here all day. It's too hot to sleep. Time is running away. Feel like my soul has turned into steel. I've still got the scars that the sun didn't heal. There's not even room enough to be anywhere. It's not dark yet, but it's getting there. That song just rips my heart out every time I hear it, because the way he sings, he goes, it's not dark yet. And then there's this pause. He goes, but it's getting there. Like, it's coming. And it's just such a great song. It's one of those songs I wish that I could hear him do live, because I mean, it's not that far-fetched, because he still does songs from Time Out of Mind live. This one you can really hear the Daniel Lanois production on it. And for those of you that don't know Daniel Lanois, you probably know him. He produced a lot of U2 records, and he had his own solo career. Canadian producer and musician, singer, really all around, brilliant guy. And he had actually produced Dylan's album "Oh Mercy" almost a decade earlier. So it was neat that they kind of got to have the reunion. But Not Dark Yet, it's just the whole song is just one of Dylan's masterpieces, and it's just a perfect song. I'm probably going to listen to it once this video is over, because I haven't heard it in a while. But Not Dark Yet, check it out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you're really making me want to get into those more
ahead.
recent albums, get on past into the 80s and 90s and the 2000s. But actually, so my next song actually is one kind of past the period where I've been buying the albums, but I actually first encountered this song on that bootleg series volume 1 through 3 set that I got, and it's a song off Blood on the Tracks called Idiot Wind, kind of continuing in that vein of sort of the biting lyrics. This one is pretty nasty in spots, but it's nasty in a way that's funny to me. I do kind of laugh a bit at this one. One of the lines the first chorus through is idiot wind blowing every time you move your mouth, blowing down the back roads heading south. Idiot wind blowing every time you move your teeth. You're an idiot, babe. It's a wonder you still know how to breathe. And so yeah, pretty nasty stuff, but done in a humorous way. So again, that humorous element that I like in some of Dylan's lyrics too. So that's my number 8.
Yeah. An Idiot Wind, fun fact, that's the song that really inspired Hootie and the Blowfish's song "Only Want to Be with You."
Mm.
And there was some some copyright issues between the two songs because Hootie took a lot of lines like, they say you shot a man named Gray, took his wife in Italy. That Hootie and the Blowfish took that exact line and put it in their song. And so there was some out of court settlement, but it was all just to honor Dylan. So there was no bad blood. But anyway, that's a great song. Number 7, I just mentioned this album after talking about the last one. It's from Oh Mercy, the other Daniel Lanois produced Dylan record, and possibly his best out of the 80s, though I would argue that Infidels is better. But a lot of people say Oh Mercy was his climax in the 80s. And it's the song Ring Them Bells. I mentioned it earlier. It's almost like almost a modern day hymn. And of course, obviously, Dylan had gone through a Christian born again phase in the late 70s into the early 80s with his trilogy. But he always had those themes. I mean, even up till now, he still has themes. And some might even argue that Infidels, which was the first album out of the trilogy, could still be considered part of the trilogy. So Ring Them Bells, it's just a beautiful song. I first heard the song by an Americana artist named Sarah Jarosz, a younger girl who's about my age. And actually my sister was fortunate enough to open for her about 8 or 9 years ago at a small venue here in town. But it's just a beautiful song. It's pure poetry. Kind of a longer lyric here, but I'm going to go ahead with it. Again, the imagery is just fantastic. He says, "Ring them bells, sweet Martha, for the poor man's son. Ring them bells so the world will know that God is one. Oh, the shepherd is asleep where the willows weep and the mountains are filled with lost sheep." And then he goes into the bridge here. He says, "Ring them bells for the blind and the deaf. Ring them bells for all of us who are left. Ring them bells for the chosen few who will judge the many when the game is through. Ring them bells for the time that flies, for the child that cries when the innocence dies." The whole song is like that, but that specific line about where the shepherd is asleep, where the willows weep, and the mountains are filled with lost sheep. I mean, that could have been taken from, an old hymn, and, Dylan just has a way of, he can rock, he can, have those biting lyrics, he can make you laugh, but then he really can make you think. And most of his lyrics really make you think, even the funny songs, because he pulls so much from literature, from poetry, from history. So it's a history lesson all in itself. And Ring Them Bells is just it's in my top 10 favorite Dylan songs, period. So anybody needs to go check that song out, if anything else.
All right. Well, yeah, my number 7 is this is one with a lot of poetic imagery, and I always kind of think of this song as like a character studies, painting pictures of various characters, and that's Desolation Row. It's my number 7. Yeah, great song. One of his longer songs, and he really kind of, like I said, he creates these characters. He gives you this imagery, and this creates this setting, so that's so vivid. There's so many great lines in here. It's hard to kind of narrow it down, but just a couple that always stick out to me. And the only sound that's left after the ambulances go is Cinderella sweeping up on Desolation Row. And then another one that I really like is, "And though her eyes are fixed upon Noah's great rainbow, she spends her time peeking into Desolation Row." There's it's really, that's one of those songs that really sets a scene very well. It kind of puts you in a place. And I was reading a bit about it. There's been apparently some discussion on what's Desolation Row. Apparently Dylan said it's somewhere in Mexico, and then somebody else who played on the album said no, it's this street in New York, and different things. So there's been a couple other places that have been offered as theories, but I don't think that really matters so much. The real place, that I think the point is really, you can find a place like that anywhere, but even beyond a physical place, I think there's a mental aspect to Desolation Row that I think he really captures in the lyrics. Especially the line about looking at Noah's rainbow, and then Desolation Row, this idea of being kind of trapped, maybe not trapped, but you're in a place that's kind of darker, and this is the reality around you. But maybe there's something out there that you're hoping for, but you got to live in this reality. which I really like. I think it's a really strong song, one of my favorites of his long songs. And yeah, just again, his skill for imagery is really, really strong. And this is a song that really drives that home.
That's one of those I was fortunate enough again to see him do that the second time that I saw him, and it was a treat to see him do that song live. And I know my friend Glenn Kellaway from the basement. He says that's his favorite Dylan harmonica solo
Mm,
at the end.
yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those. It doesn't feel like it's 11 minutes. It moves itself along pretty well.
Yeah, you're really getting kind of engrossed in the story, and the time just goes by. Yeah.
My number six, again, it's one of those albums that a lot of people consider as Dylan's best. It's definitely in my top 10, if not my top five, and that is Highway 61 Revisited. It's the song Tombstone Blues.
Mm,
Now, this is not a song that I think about all the time because it's actually not one of my favorite songs on the album, but a specific line in this song is one that for a long time I said was my favorite Dylan lyric. And I originally had just written down the one small, short little line, but I put the four lines together so that it's more cohesive for the purposes of this video. But the line is, he says, the commander in chief answers him while chasing a fly, saying death to all those who have whimpered and cried. And dropping a barbell, he points to the sky, saying, the sun's not yellow, it's chicken, which I absolutely love that song where he says, the sun's not yellow, it's chicken. That's one of those lines I didn't understand it for a long time. I was like, what is he talking about? And then I was like, he's saying, he's just saying two different variants on the word coward. And it's just one of those, stream of consciousness type lyrics that Dylan was known for in the mid 60s with his trilogy of electric albums. And not much more to say about it other than just the humor behind it, the play on words, just again shows that Dylan took time in his craft. And if you look at any of his notebooks that he was filling up during this time and stationery pads, you can tell he was crafting lyrics all the time. Even in the studio, he was making the studio guys switch things at the last minute. So number 6, Tombstone Blues.
Yeah, that's a great song. It didn't make my list, but it was kind of the ones in my first pass through where I had about 25 songs. It was on that list. Uh, there's some great guitar work on that track too. I really love the guitar, so bluesy and great tone. All right, my number 6 is I'm going back to Freewheeling with one of his early and best known songs. And kind of sometimes I think about those songs and think, is it kind of cliche to include them or whatever, but sometimes those songs become so iconic for a reason. And so my number 6 is Blowing in the Wind. It's there's just so many great lines all throughout the song. Where this is one of his early sort of message songs, but I think the message is really strong. Lines like how many roads must a man walk down before you can call him a man? And then later, how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head pretending he just doesn't see? These are, it's much more straightforward perhaps than some of his later stuff, but it really drives the point home, and I think it really. It's important things that need to be said, and sometimes people need to think about how easy it is to kind of um, overlook somebody else's situation if your situation is okay. And then sometimes we really need to pay attention to how bad somebody else has it, because how can things get better for them if other people who have the means aren't willing to help? So yeah, it's a classic. It's again, maybe it's become overdone over the years, but I think lyrically, if you really think about the lyrics, it holds up really well.
And I think he only wrote it in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
something like that. I'm glad you mentioned that song because I was really torn. Songs like that or the times they are changing, I was really wanting to put on there, but I was also wanting, to showcase some of the lesser known tracks. So I'm glad that you mentioned it. Doesn't make me feel as bad about my choices. My number 5 is from an album you've already mentioned, From Another Side. It's the song My Back Pages, which of course was really made famous by the Byrds on their folk rock jangle version of it, which is my preferred version. Although my favorite version of the song is from the 30th anniversary concert in Madison Square Garden, where you have Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Clapton, Tom Petty, Neil Young, Roger McGuinn, all of these guys, these no names that get together with Bob Dylan and do this song. But it's got one of the best refrains of any song that Dylan ever wrote. It was one of the few songs that actually had a recurring, you know, line that came back, because Dylan didn't always do choruses or anything like that. So he usually would, either do a refrain or, mention the title again. But the verse that I put in there was, in a soldier's stance, I aimed my hand at the mongrel dogs who teach, fearing not that I'd become my enemy in the instant that I preach. My pathway led by confusion boats, mutiny from stern to bow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. And this, again, we've talked about earlier, this album was, it's Dylan's fourth album. And, everybody always thinks about Dylan in the 60s as being this folk guy. But if you really look at his whole career, he really truly only made 3.5 folk albums in his initial run. I mean, he did a couple of folk albums in the 90s to kind of go back to his roots. But, after the times they are changing, Dylan was kind of moving toward the pop vein, even though this is an all acoustic album. The lyrically, all the stuff could have been on Bring It All Back Home, Highway 61. It's the same kind of lyrics. And this song really kind of shows, those first 3 albums, I was writing about really serious topics: Vietnam, politics, civil rights. But now I'm having some fun with some of my lyrics. I mean, you have songs on here like, I Shall Be Free, number 10, Motorcycle Nightmare, stuff like that. And then you mentioned It Ain't Me, Babe. That's the closing track on here. So him saying I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now, was, I'm writing kind of more youthful lyrics. I'm writing for my age, because he's still only, 23 when this album comes out, and he already sounds weathered and like he's been through it. So just full of great imagery in this song. Talk about the mongrel dogs who teach, fearing that I become my enemy in the instant that I preach. He's kind of saying that he's kind of hurting himself with some of his lyrics. So all sorts of things that you can decipher, but just that whole refrain of being older than, younger than that now, it's kind of, it kind of became like a mantra for Dylan, I guess, and everything that he did from that point on. So My Back Pages makes the top 5.
Just kind of digress a little bit to follow up on what you're saying about Another Side of Bob Dylan. What I find fascinating about that album, it's only like, it came out like 7 or 8 months after The Times They Are Changing, which is his most, political kind of directly, protest song. And then he goes the complete other direction. And one of the things is I've listened to him more and learned more about him. That fascinated me about him as a person is how he does not want anybody to pigeonhole him into being a certain thing or live up to their expectations. He wants to be free to kind of go wherever his muse takes him. And so it was really, actually, I think, very bold of him to do Another Side of Bob Dylan after that, because he had sort of become the poster boy for this folk rock protest movement at that point. And then he comes out with Another Side, which, like you say, is a bit more kind of poppy. There's more sort of relationship type songs and that sort of thing. And he does the same thing at the end of the decade, when he's feels like he's getting boxed in to this voice of his generation stuff, and then he puts out a self-portrait. It seems like part of his motivation with that album is to completely undermine all that sort of thing. So I think that's fascinating about him as a person. All right, my number 5 is and this is going to be from I actually really didn't get very many songs from this album, but it is my favorite Dylan album, is Bringing It All Back Home. And so my number 5 is the first track on the album, Subterranean Homesick Blues. And what's interesting to me about this song, there are a couple different kind of schools of thought about lyric writing. And I remember Ian Gillan of Deep Purple and talking about the song Space Truckin', which has got some kind of weird lyrics, to it. But he said, the most important thing about a lyric is not the words, it's the rhythm and the sibilance, and that it sings right. And I remember Jack Bruce saying something similar when he was talking about some of Cream's songs. If you listen to some of those songs, they've got lyrics that, Tales of Brave Ulysses, that are like really bizarre. But the idea is that it sounds good when you sing it. Um, Now, Dylan's lyrics on this song are a bit more sophisticated, I would say, than Space Truckin', as much as I love Space Truckin'. But what really gets me about these lyrics is that rhythm, and that the sense of meter, and how it flows. It's really incredibly well constructed. And so if you look at, like, just picking out lines, they're not necessarily things that stick out in terms of lines so much to me, but just that flow of the rhythm and how well constructed it is. But there are a couple lines that stick out, and one in particular that I wanted to mention that I love is "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows." I love that line. And there's a lot of other good ones throughout, but yeah, to me, this is the song that is really a testament to his ability to kind of understand the rhythm of words, and how words flow, and how they lead from one thing to the other. So it's a great song, great lyrics. And of course, it's got that iconic video where he's, holding up, just it's just like one or two words at a time, like at the end of a phrase, but he's, going through those poster boards of the lyrics.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great song. One of my lines from that one is, once $11 bills, you've only got 10.
Yeah, yeah, I love that one too.
That's a great line. And I think that line, I mean, and I know Dylan is considered, he's like the most quoted musician in courts, in the court system. And I know that there was a famous case, I can't remember, where somebody had said, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. So that's a great line just to say, like, it's just great.
Right.
All right, number 4, and it's kind of a nice segue because it's from the same album, from Bringing It All Back Home. It's the song "It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding," from the acoustic half of the album. And there's a great version of this song live on the Before the Flood live album that Dylan did with the band. It was his reunion tour with the band, promoting the Planet Waves album. Even though they didn't really do any songs from that album. But that's my favorite version of the song, probably. But great, the acoustic playing is great. It's in, for the guitar players, it's in drop D tuning. And I mean, it's one of those longer songs where it's just Dylan rattling off a ton of lyrics in the style of Subterranean Homestead Blues, just, darkness at the break of noon, shadows even the silver, just constantly. But the line that I put, and it's probably the one that everybody would put for this song, is, while preachers preach of evil fates, teachers teach that knowledge waits, can lead to $100 plates, goodness hides behind its gates. But even the president of the United States sometimes must have to stand naked. That line is just absolutely killer because it works any time period, shows that, the most powerful people in the world, they're still human, they're still, animals. And every time he sings that line, he says it a little bit louder, and everybody, erupts, because it works for whatever political side you're on. So like, he can sing that for the, the more conservative, South. You can sing it for the more liberal North, or in California. Wherever you play it, people are going to cheer because it's going to be like, oh, yeah, that president or this president, So it works across all platforms. It's just a brilliant line. And again, the way that he phrases it, and especially live, not necessarily on the album version, but especially live, where he just shouts it, and with that guitar, because it's just usually when he plays, it's just him, going down, down, bow, 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 bow. It's just one of my all-time favorites. And yeah, number 4, It's All Right, Ma.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great song, and great lyrics. I may have more to say about that in a minute.
Okay, good.
Uh,
That's interesting.
but my number four, this one, I kind of went in a different direction for the type of song. This one, you know, sometimes uh, simple is really good, and this is one of his most simple lyrics, but it's also to me one of his most effective. I just love the song. I loved it back. I mentioned Ian Gillan earlier. Ian Gillan did a cover of this song back in 2006. He kind of did it as a Zydeco flavored tune, but it's a great song. I'll be your baby tonight. You know,
Yeah.
it's the lyrics are very short, but they're like I said, simple and effective, and it works with the song so well. Close your eyes, close your door. You don't have to worry anymore. I'll be your baby tonight. And I love the bridge too. Well, that mockingbird's going to sail away. We're going to forget it. That big fat moon is going to shine like a spoon. We're going to let it. You won't regret it. It's again very very simple. It's just a love song. It's maybe one of his most poppy songs in a way, but but I just think it's very effective, and it's such a great song. I had to get it in my top five. So number four for me is "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight."
And also very well covered by Chris Christopherson
Mm.
as well. He does a great version of it. I think had a pretty good hit with it. Um, all right, top three. It's hard to believe. Um, from This is from my all-time favorite Dylan song, because as a song itself, the whole thing works well. But in terms of a specific lyric, um, which is how I kind of organized this list, um, it came in at number three because there were just two more lines, number two and number one, that just I had to put where they went. But from this album, "Shot of Love," which is his final, Christian album, so to speak, even though about half the album isn't necessarily gospel music. Um, it's the song "Every Grain of Sand," which is just an absolute masterpiece of an album, of a song. And I might have misspoken. This actually might be Dylan's harmonica solo that Glenn was talking about, but either way, I know he likes them both. Um, just a beautiful ballad. And again, I was very very fortunate last time I saw Dylan to see him do this for the first time that I've seen him do it. He was doing it on this current tour, and he would close the show with the song "Every Grain of Sand." But the line that I wrote was, he says, "I gaze into the doorway of temptation's angry flame, and every time I pass that way, I always hear my name. Then onward in my journey, I come to understand that every hair is numbered like every grain of sand." Um, I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, you've got ridiculous songs in this album, like Lenny Bruce, where he talks about the stand-up comedian. Um, a song like "The Groom Still Waiting at the Altar." So he's got some odd songs in this album, but then he closes with, for me, his greatest triumph, with "Every Grain of Sand." And the whole song is just beautiful. There's the saddest harmonica solo, but again, it's another one of those songs like "Ring Them Bells" that it's a modern hymn. I've actually played this before at a church, and I mean, I just absolutely love everything about this song. Just that imagery. There's another line where he talks about every sparrow falling like every grain of sand, just talking about the tiny details in life that you know that it doesn't go unnoticed. um and I just think that's really really beautiful. And yeah, I can't speak high enough about this song. So it's number three though. So I could have spoken higher of it, but I put it at number three.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's one of the things when I started sort of this Dylan exploration. One of the things that I have really been kind of looking forward to is getting to that Christian trilogy to kind of see kind of his take on that with those songs. All right, my number three is a song that you've already mentioned, and that's "It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding." It is a great song, and as I was looking through, there's so many great lyrics throughout the whole song. I was trying to decide, if I'm just going to pick like one, verse or section of a verse, what should I pick? And I just highlighted a few, and I said, well, I'll just pick whichever one strikes me at the moment. Fortunately, you've already mentioned one of them, so that kind of makes it easier. I can pick something else to highlight. And I think the line I'm going to go with, well, I will mention too, um, I like the line or the lyric, as some mourn victory, some downfall, private reasons, great or small, can be seen in the eyes of those that call to make all that should be killed to crawl, while others say, don't hate nothing at all except hatred. Yeah. And then the end of the song, I love. And if my thought dreams could be seen, they'd probably put my head in a guillotine. But it's all right, Ma. It's life and life only. So it's another one of his kind of more epic songs, and just great lyrics throughout. And yeah, again, the line you said about even the president of the United States must stand naked. There's so many great songs, and just just the idea of the hypocrisy of looking at the outside, and not focusing on the inside, and that we're all people. It's great tune.
And it's one of those great songs where it's one of those you think like, oh yeah, I love the line where he says, it's all right, Mom, only bleeding, but he never says that.
Right.
So but it's just yeah, fantastic song, probably my favorite Dylan protest song. Maybe this is probably the biggest surprise for me on this list. Well, maybe not for me, because I know that I love this line so much, but for other people, probably didn't think I would pull out this album. And I'm pulling out from the Traveling Wilburys, from the very first of the two albums, Volume 1, the song Tweeter and the Monkey Man. An absolutely epic song. There are disputes as to who wrote what on this song, but everybody kind of agrees that it's essentially Bob Dylan. I think George Harrison and Jeff Lynne might have had a hand in the chorus, but the chorus isn't what I'm going to be focusing on. It's for those of you that don't know, the song "Twitter and the Monkey Man" is about a drug deal that's gone wrong. It's kind of like a modern day like cowboy thing where people are running away and getting followed by the law, trying to get away. There's a big shootout, and just two people that just hate each other, Tweeter and the Monkey Man, which are so Dylan. There's those names for characters, but they mentioned a lot of Bruce Springsteen songs in the track. Some people thought they were dissing Bruce Springsteen when they don't. Actually, they even mention a Tom Waits line, the song Jersey Girl. But the line that I'm going to mention here, absolutely, I love this line so much. They say, the next day, the undercover cop was hot in pursuit. He was taking the whole thing personal. He didn't care about the loot. Jan had told him many times, it was you to me who taught. In Jersey, anything's legal as long as you don't get caught. I love that, because he's got these characters. The undercover cop is a character. Jan is a character. She's like a lover of the characters, and obviously the undercover cop is the one chasing them down the road. But that line about in Jersey anything's legal as long as you don't get caught, that's just a wonderful line. And I know I have an uncle who's a police officer in forensics here in town, and that's even a line that he likes, even though it goes completely against all things law enforcement. he loves that line too. And actually later on, because obviously the Wilburys never toured, so the Wilbury songs, you have to get them live by the surviving members. And Tom Petty actually recorded the song, I think in 2014. Him and the Heartbreakers did a long residency at the Beacon Theater, and they did this kind of like a jammy version. And just hearing it live by one of the Wilburys, and I mean, it wasn't Dylan singing it obviously, but to hear Tom do it is just epic. So Tweeter and the Monkey Man, number 2, that's just such a great song.
Yeah, and you made me think of something else that I'll just throw out real quick, because you talk about with Springsteen. Reminds me of one of my favorite Dylan quotes from an interview. I don't remember when this was, but at some point he was doing an interview, I think with Rolling Stone, and the interviewer made some comment about Bob Seger being the poor man's Bruce Springsteen. And Dylan said, well, actually, I think of Springsteen as the rich man's Bob Seger, but he said, but he did go on to say that he liked both of those guys,
That's
but I just
awesome.
always thought it was a great line. Yeah. All right, my number two is another of Dylan's sort of iconic songs that I had to put on the list. And even though it's maybe a bit overdone, but I think it earned its place. And so my number two is Like a Rolling Stone from Highway 61 Revisited. Um, it's yeah, the lyrics, it's kind of one of those lyrics that I think you can kind of take parts of it in two ways. Most of the verses, he's obviously addressing it to some woman who's kind of gotten her comeuppance, she's fallen from her perch, but I think one of the things that people really sort of latch on to it is if you just think about the lyrics in the chorus, that it speaks to sort of a bit of disaffectedness, and feeling not a part of things, and I think that taps into something that I think most people can kind of identify with it, and that's what makes the song so iconic. But in terms of the verse, I love the line or the lyric. You used to laugh about everybody that was hanging out, and now you don't walk so proud. Now you don't talk so loud about having to be scrounging your next meal. So it's kind of another one of those sort of biting things. But the chorus is great. As I love, how does it feel to be on your own with no direction home, a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? It's that chorus is just iconic, so iconic that the Scorsese named that documentary after that line, "No Direction Home." So that's my number two, is Like a Rolling Stone.
Great. Well, yeah, glad that you put it in there because I didn't. Number one for me, in all seriousness, this is probably well, I would say this is definitely my favorite protest song that he did. I know I mentioned It's All Right, Ma, but this is genuinely my favorite protest song, and definitely 100% in my top 5 favorite Dylan songs of all time. It's from The Times They Are Changing, with God on Our Side. And again, to think that Dylan was 22, 23, writing a song like that, just unbelievable, especially somebody that Dylan came from Midwestern Minnesota, hadn't seen really any major excitement in his life. He wasn't drafted. He wasn't, he didn't have, he wasn't a violent guy. So it wasn't like he grew up in the streets, like in gangs or anything like that. So the fact that he can just pull all this stuff out just from what he read and what he listened to on, the radio, on TV, is incredible. And it's one of those songs, he goes through American history, goes through all the wars, and how everybody that's ever fought in a war, whatever side that they're on, they say that they're on the winning side, that they're on the side, they're the good guys. All the way down the line, I'm sure even, some of the most horrendous armies of, in history, so that they were doing God's work, going through combat. And Dylan just kind of putting that into perspective. But then he turns it around to biblical history. And again, at this point, Dylan was still, I don't think he was a practicing Jew, but he obviously had strong Jewish upbringing. But he says, through many a dark hour, I've been thinking about this, that Jesus Christ was betrayed by a kiss. But I can't think for you. You'll have to decide whether Judas Iscariot had God on his side. And again, for those of you that don't know, this history that is referencing when Christ in the Bible was betrayed, but ended up becoming, leading up to his crucifixion. One of his disciples, Judas, showed who Christ was to the guards by kissing him on the cheek. That was his signal. And so, here's Judas, one of supposedly the 12 best men that Jesus could find, betraying the guy that he's been following and listening to for some time. And so Dylan's kind of saying, that was supposed to happen, but did Judas have God on his side? That's a very powerful thought. It's one that's been talked about for years. I know I've given talks about that line. I've given messages called "With God on Our Side," and it's just one of my absolute. Well, it is my favorite Dylan lyrics. Just incredibly powerful. And then my mind just can't wrap around the fact that he was so young when he wrote this, because the whole song, I mean, he mentions things about the Germans murdering 6 million, and he said, did the Germans have God on their side? Just all sorts of just really thought-provoking pieces of imagery. So that's my number one, With God on Our Side.
Yeah, great song. It was very close to making my list too. It's very powerful lyrics. Um, so my number one is a song that showed up a little bit further down on your list, and it's actually as I was kind of going through and ranking them, I was a little surprised that this ended up as my number one, just because it's a song that I know, but it's from an album I haven't gotten to yet as I've been buying through in the sequence. So from Blood on the Tracks, Tangled Up in Blue is my number one. And it's another one of those longer songs and gives you a bit of a story. This time he's kind of looking at things from different perspectives and points in time and that sort of thing, and how your perspective shifts through time and that sort of thing. I find all that really interesting. But the verse that I decided to highlight for this ranking was, so now I'm going back again. I got to get it to her somehow. All the people we used to know, they're an illusion to me now. Some are mathematicians, some are carpenters' wives. Don't know how it all got started. I don't know what they do with their lives, but me, I'm still on the road, heading for another joint. We always did feel the same. We just saw it from a different point of view, Tangled Up in Blue. So the end of the song, and it's yeah, great song. And it's another one of those with a great sense of the rhythm to the words too. And I like how, he rhymes, the the lines, and then but you've got like a certain rhyming scheme going, then he kind of always twists it at the end, to rhyme, that is always a word to rhyme with a blue at the end, which seems like it comes out of nowhere, because it's almost like that always seems like it comes through like halfway through a line. He like shifts it, somehow. So I think it's clever how he plays with the words there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's it. Well, let's should we recap just real quick, 10-1, go through? You want to do yours?
Sure, let me pull it up here. Yeah, so for me, I have, well, let me see. I just closed the document that I had everything. There it is. So number 10, Make You Feel My Love. Number 9, Tangled Up in Blue. Number 8, Not Dark Yet. Number 7, Ring Them Bells. 6, Tombstone Blues. 5, My Back Pages. 4, It's All Right Mom, Only Bleeding. 3 is Every Grain of Sand. 2, Tweeter and the Monkey Man, and then With God on Our Side, capping it off.
And mine were number 10, I Shall Be Free. Number 9, It Ain't Me, Babe. Number 8, Idiot Wind. Number 7, Desolation Row. Number 6, Blowing in the Wind. Number 5, Subterranean Homesick Blues. Number 4, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. Number 3, It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. Number 2, Like a Rolling Stone. And number 1, Tangled Up in Blue. All right. Well, man, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Me too. Yeah, appreciate you inviting me on the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody watching my channel not familiar with Sam's channel, go check it out. He's got a lot of great stuff. Again, Americana and stuff. I was just yesterday watching your concert review from your Elton John concert, so that sounded like that was a lot of fun. So everybody check him out, and thanks for watching.